Yeah, folks in online, good morning. Guys, we'll start with the session. Okay, I'm just going to share my screen. Yes, yes. Let's start with the session. I'm just going to share my screen. Okay. Let's open the document. And today we'll talk about the presentation layer, business layer, what is data access layer. Okay. Then we are going to understand about what are the technologies, what are the frameworks that we can use to develop these layers using Java. These things I'm going to explain in the session today. Let me. Okay, we'll start now. Just give me a minute. Okay. So in the previous session, that is yesterday, I told every project is going to contain some common functionalities. Okay. And just we have discussed a list out of the common functionalities over there. In this, we are going to discuss about what is a dependency injection. Okay. We are going to start with the Spring core module before we enter into Spring Boot. Means some Spring basics that you must know. Directly, we cannot enter into the Spring Boot. First of all, you must know about the Spring basics. Spring basics means you have to learn first actually Spring core module. Actually, in Spring framework, there are many other modules are there. But if you know the Spring core module, remaining modules you can simultaneously learn along with the Spring Boot. In the Spring Boot, we can discuss the remaining modules. That is not a problem. But without learning the Spring core module, we cannot directly enter into Spring Boot and we cannot develop applications with the Spring Boot and microservices also. And even to start the Spring applications also, first of all, you should know about one build tool called Maven. So without using any build tool, we cannot develop the Spring Boot applications or microservices applications. Okay, that's why our plan is first, today I will talk about some what is presentation layer, business layer, data access layer, and what is called API layer. So what are the technologies and frameworks that are available to develop these layers, and how Spring framework got more popularity in the application development. So then next we are going to start with the Spring core module, which is the first module and base module of the Spring learning curve. If at all you want to start learning the Spring Boot microservices, first of all, everybody has to learn one common module of the Spring that is called Spring core module. There are other modules are also there in Spring. You are going to learn, you are going to get the names today. Okay, but which module first you have to learn is Spring core module. So if you know the Spring core module, then you are going to get all the Spring framework basics and the Spring framework annotations. So now with this journey or with this knowledge, you can able to start working with the Spring Boot applications. Then you can easily learn the Spring Boot applications and also microservices applications. Okay, so let's start our discussion today. So at the time of discussion in the Spring core module, I'm going to completely give you what is the meaning of dependency injection. Dependency injection, dependency lookup, inversion of control. You are going to get some terminology like this in Spring Core module. Okay, Spring container, okay, Spring configuration file. So we are going to learn some basics about Spring at the time of Spring Core module. In that, I am going to talk about what is called dependency injection. I am also going to talk about what is called a dependency lookup and what is called a dependency injection. Okay, you are going to understand what are the types of dependency injections. Okay, right? So how the dependency injection will work in the Spring framework, how Spring container will provide the dependencies. So all these things I'm going to talk about that. Okay. As of now, dependency injection is related to has a relationship between the objects. What type of relationship? Has a relationship between the objects. That is going to become dependencies. Okay. Is a relationship and has a relationship, you should know. Already you know about inheritance. Child class is a parent class. Between child class to parent class, there is a easy relationship. There is a easy relationship between the child class and parent class. Whenever you create a child class extends what? Parent class. When you create a child class extends what? Parent class, which is nothing but what? Child class is a parent class. The relationship between child class to parent class is always easy relationship. If you create one class object in another class, if you create one class object in another class, it is going to become has a relationship. It is going to become has a relationship. Has a relationship, right? If you create one class object in another class, then it is going to become what type of relationship? Has a relationship. Has a relationship. That has a relationship is called dependencies. So you are going to understand this in the Spring Core module. Probably, if possible, today I will give introduction. Otherwise, from tomorrow, we are going to continue with that. Okay. So first today, what actually we want to discuss is what is the meaning of presentation layer and what is the meaning of business layer? What is the meaning of data access layer? So these things I'm going to explain in the session for today. So everybody try to focus on these things. Okay. When you talk about any web application development, in the web application development, we are going to find out three layers. Okay. Applications are going to be developed based on layered architecture, which is also called as a three-tier architecture. Okay. We have the presentation layer and we have the business logic layer, also called business layer. And next one is called data access layer. Sometimes it is also called as persistence layer. Sometimes it is also called as persistence layer. Presentation layer, business layer, which is also called as service layer. Next one is called as data access layer. Okay, three layers will be there. Means application development will be done based on the functionalities. Okay, right? So users are going to interact, or the clients are going to interact with the, or users are going to interact with the presentation layer. Presentation layer is to display the information to the users. Presentation layer is also used to take the input from the users. Presentation layer is always used either to display the information to the user or take the input from the user. For this purpose, which layer we are going to develop? Presentation layer. So how does users can interact with the projects? With the help of presentation layer only. Presentation layer is for users. Okay, right. Let's understand first of all. Today, I'm going to give you a very good clarity. Let's start one by one. See, basically, if you take any software application architecture, that architecture is containing a client. This client is nothing but a browser. Okay, this client is nothing but browser. It could be the Google Chrome or Microsoft Edge or Firefox. This is the browser. This browser, we call it as client application. Browser is also an application, okay? It's you are installing in your machine. Suppose I purchased a new laptop. In that, Google Chrome browser is not available, right? Windows I have installed in my new laptop, new machine I purchased. By default, Windows doesn't get any Google Chrome browser. Am I right or not? Then what are you doing now? First, you are going to install. You are going to download Google Chrome and you are installing. Nothing but what Google Chrome is one application, which is nothing but what every browser is an application. So this is the browser. This is nothing but the client. And now I have something called as presentation layer of the application. Okay, presentation layer of the application. Next, I have something called as, I will try to fit it in the same document. I'll try to make it fit into the same document. Now, this is going to be the presentation layer. Now, this is going to be the service layer or business logic layer. Here, business rules are implemented. The classes are developed. Okay, right. So, this is going to be the business logic layer. These classes are going to perform the business logic operations. Now, these classes are going to perform the data access operations. Okay, data access operations. Okay, so this data access layer is actually going to communicate with the database to store the information or update the information or to delete the information. Now it is going to communicate with the database. Let me add the database over there. This is going to be the database. Let's say, for example, okay, right? So this is going to be the database. Let's say, let us make it straight. Let us make it straight. Okay, now let us come to the point here. So what I am trying to say, I am trying to say that, tell me, this is going to be what? The first one, which is going to be the, this is going to be the client. This client is also called as what? Browser. This client is also is a browser. This is called client. This is the client. Okay, this is the client. Now coming to the point. This layer is called what layer of the application? Presentation layer of the application. This is called presentation layer. Presentation layer. Spelling mistake. Presentation layer. This is the presentation layer of the application. Okay, now right. Now this is called what layer of the application? Service layer of the or business layer of the application. Service layer of the application or business layer of the application. Next, the other layer is called what layer? Data access layer of the application. Data access layer of the application. Okay, right? Now finally we have the database. Finally we have the database. Database. Okay, right? This is the client. This is the presentation layer. This is a service layer. This is a data access layer, and this is the database. Client means what? It is a browser, because user is always going to use a browser to interact with applications. How are you interacting with the Facebook or Twitter or Gmail or any other application? You are going to interact with the application through what? Browser. Browser is nothing but a agent for the client. Okay, right? Otherwise we call it as a client agent. Okay, client agent is nothing but browser. Okay, right? So user agent is browser, means user will use browser always to interact with the projects. Am I right or not? Any application are interacting with what only? Browser only. Suppose I am an end user, I want to book a train ticket. Okay, how do I interact with the IRCTC application? Browser. I will open my browser, I will type irctc.com. Like that I'm going to type. Am I right or not? Right. Immediately it is going to show me one page, a login page or some page it is going to show me, right? Very good. So which is nothing but the page is to display the information to the user. Page is to display information to the user, or the page is to accept the input from the user. They are called web pages. To develop those web pages, which layer is developed in the project? Presentation layer. What presentation layer will display or will generate? Web pages. Presentation layer is used to generate the web pages of the application. Web pages of the application. Very good. Presentation layer is to develop the web pages of the application. What type of web pages are required in the project nowadays? Dynamic web pages. What type of web page is required? Dynamic. There are static web pages and there are dynamic web pages. For example, you know HTML, CSS, and JavaScript only, and you don't know other technologies or other frameworks. Then what type of web pages you can develop with your knowledge? Static web pages you can develop. Right? What pages you can develop? Static. Suppose you know HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and also you know servlet technology and JSP technology also. Then you can develop what type of web pages? Dynamic web pages. Or you know Angular or React JS framework. Then also you can develop what type of web pages? Dynamic web pages. First, I am talking about basics. See, in the Java projects, everybody, online people, if you have any query, please let me know by typing your query in the chat box, or you can directly speak to me, no issues. Okay. At any point, if you are not catching, please let me know. Now, this is the client. Always interaction will be from client to the presentation layer. Interaction will be from client to the presentation layer, and again from presentation layer to the service layer. And from service layer, it is going to be the data access layer. And data access layer is going to interact with the database to store the information, or it will read the information from the database if required. Whatever the information it is reading from the database, it is going to provide it to which layer? Service layer. Service layer. And the service layer is going to provide this information to the presentation layer. The presentation layer will generate a dynamic web page for the data and will send that web page to the client.
So for one application, we can use multiple database?
Definitely. That depends on requirement. We can use one SQL database, one NoSQL database.
In one application dot properties, we can mention the
No, not one application. I think you have already some knowledge by with your question I can understand, but not one application or properties. Okay, you can also do it with one application properties, or you can also create multiple application properties also.
So prod dev environment
that is called as profiles concept you are talking about. They are called that is called profiles. We can create multiple profiles for multiple environments.
So how we can mention different database different database properties?
In a single properties file also you can maintain different database connection properties. Okay, by default Spring dot data source dot means by default Spring will read those connection properties. If you write custom connection properties, my connection dot data source dot like that, if you write, then you need to write one class to load those configuration properties into your application. Like that, two database connections you can maintain. It is not a problem. That is called a multi-data source application. I will tell you, don't worry, but not immediately. You have to wait for a month. Okay, it's possible, but whatever you are asking, it is possible that we are going to see in our application development. I will tell everything. I have a lot of knowledge on this. You don't worry on this, right? So client, presentation layer, service layer, data access layer. Next one is called what? Database. Let's move on this. Okay, let's go on and have everything on this. Okay, you just try to understand what every day I'm explaining. Okay, I'll make you a master in this Spring Boot with microservices. Okay, right. I'll just open my mind and I'll keep whatever is there in my mind, everything in front of you. How you will receive is that is your choice. Okay, right. Come to the point. This is the client, presentation layer, service layer, data access layer, and the database. So these are the different layers of a software application architecture. A web application architecture looks like this. Now let us understand about what are the technologies that we have used. I'm talking about initially. Initially, I'm not talking about frameworks directly. I want to come a step-by-step process so that I'll tell you finally why Spring framework is this much popular in the industry. Why not other frameworks? Other frameworks are gone. There is only one framework everybody is talking about. But the only one framework everybody is talking about? Spring framework. You are also learning only one framework. That is called what? Spring. And along with the Spring, in the Spring only, you are also getting some Hibernate knowledge, JPA knowledge. Am I right or not? But you're not separately learning other frameworks, right? So why? We are going to understand that today. Okay. So means why Spring is a hero, we want to discuss now. That's what our concept today. Okay. Observe here. So to develop the presentation layer can be used for designing and developing the web pages. Either static web pages or dynamic web pages. Correct? To develop the dynamic web, I'm only talking with respect to Java. I'm just going to talk with respect to Java. To develop the dynamic web pages, we have Java technologies called Servlet and JSP. Servlet is a technology which can generate a dynamic web page. JSP is a technology which can generate what type of web page? Dynamic web page. Okay. What is the meaning of static web page and dynamic web page? What is static web page and what is dynamic web page? Anybody from online also, you can attend questions. What is a static web page and what is dynamic web page? Static web pages are only to show the information to the user. Okay. Static web page means what? It will only use it to display the information to the user, and the same information will be given to every user. For example, I am creating one tutorial website. I created one small website called jvmtutorialshaker.com. Simple one website with only 2 pages. In that one page, I will draw the JVM architecture complete diagram. The second page, I'll explain about the components of the JVM. JVM tutorial by shaker.com is a website. Okay, and I'm telling that this is my website. Go and read about JVM internals. Now you are all going to open my website. Same page will be given to all of you. Same page will be shown to all of you. First page with the same diagram. Second page the same content. You visit today, tomorrow, day after tomorrow, you are visiting, your friend is visiting, if I am visiting or somebody is visiting. My application is going to show what? Same page. Means almost all tutorial websites comes under static websites. Almost all tutorial websites comes under static. My website doesn't ask any information from you. I don't want your input. I don't want your input. I do not want to process your input. I do not want to process your input. No processing required. I do not want to develop any customized data for you. This is called what type of web page? Static web page. For example, you take Amazon page. You open Amazon.in. Okay, first initially we are getting one Amazon home page. But in the search bar, you can able to search for your products. I am also opening Amazon.in. We are searching for some products. Correct? Then tell me, you are searching for a different product. I am also searching for a product, but my product is a different product. Then tell me, for you and me, Amazon is going to give me same page or different pages? Which is because of it is a dynamic web page. It's a dynamic. Okay? Right. So dynamic means what? Providing customized web pages based on the user requirement. Based on the user requirement. Your requirement different. You are searching for mobiles. Suppose I am searching for laptops. Your requirement different, my requirement different. Based on your requirement, a customized web page will be shown to you. Based on my requirement, another customized web page is shown to me. Able to follow me now? Right? So this is called what? Creating the dynamic web pages. Dynamic web pages. Good. Try to understand now. So I'm talking about, try to understand now, I'm talking about technologies only. Common technologies are what? HTML, CSS, JavaScript. Whether you develop a static web page or a dynamic web page, okay, if you have known about servlet technology already, when you're writing servlet code, inside the servlet code, you're writing out.println, HTML tags also you're writing inside that. HTML, head, body, something like that. Which means what I'm trying to say, what are the common technologies for developing both static web pages and dynamic web pages? HTML, CSS, JavaScript, right? Now I'm talking about what are the other not common, what are the other technologies required for developing the dynamic web pages? When we are in Java, what are the technologies we know? There is a technology called servlet. There is a technology called servlet technology. Okay. And there is another technology called JSP technology. JSP stands for JSP, yeah? JSP stands for Java server page. Java server page. Everybody in online, try to understand here. Am I clear with you guys? Okay. There is a technology called servlet technology. There is another technology called JSP technology. Then tell me, this is servlet technology and JSP technology. Both the technologies are belongs to Java technologies only. And with the help of these technologies, we can able to generate what type of web pages? Dynamic web pages. These are technologies used for generating what type of web pages? Dynamic web pages, right? Dynamic web pages. Okay, very good. So to develop the presentation layer, we used which technologies of Java earlier? Servlet technology and JSP technology. Okay, good. Next. JDBC for a data access layer. I'll come here. JDBC for what purpose we use? To connect with the data. Next one, coming to service layer. To develop the service layer of the project, we have used to store the information, we have used Java Beans. Yesterday and day before yesterday, I told about something called as what is a Java Bean. We used Java Beans, and also we have used one technology called EJB. EJB stands for Enterprise Java Bean. What is it? Enterprise Java Bean. Folks in online, try to understand it. Okay, na? One is Java Bean and second one is Enterprise Java Bean. Both the EJB is one of the, it's a technology which was very popular actually. Of course, now people don't know about the technology called EJB, but actually I worked for many years on EJB technology. Okay, XML, EJB, because at that time they are the great things. Okay, right. Later on, because of the complexities of EJB technology, only Spring Framework was actually introduced. Spring Framework was introduced as an alternate for EJB technology. Okay, right? Good. Next, coming to the point. I'm first talking about diagram number 1. This is my first diagram. So how web applications development done in Java earlier. Okay. To data access layer, we have the only technology called as JDBC. So which technology used for a database operations? JDBC technology used to perform what operations? Database operations. Actually, Entity Beans is also one more technology. That's a part of EJB only, but I do not want to go much details about that. So simply let us understand because you know JDBC. Now you tell me, to develop a database could be SQL based database. SQL based database means Oracle or MySQL or whatever it is, your choice. Observe here. So this is called which layer of the application? Presentation layer. This is called service layer. This is called data access layer. Now I will talk about it. So what are the common technologies used for developing the presentation layer apart from servlet and JSP? These are for generating dynamic web pages. But along with these technologies, what are common technologies? HTML, CSS, JavaScript. These are the common. Later on, Bootstrap also introduced, but commonly HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Let us understand more in detail. Next, I'm talking about layer wise. Later on, means after some years, one framework was introduced, and it was the popular framework at that time. Even yesterday also I told you that is called Struts framework. What is it? Struts framework. Struts framework. So now, Struts framework is, it's not replacement, but framework is always a layer a layer on existing technologies. See, previously I'm a developer. Previously, I used to develop applications by using technologies directly. But today, as a developer, I'm going to use what to develop my application? Frameworks. But those frameworks are internally going to use the same technologies. Are you able to follow me now? Right. So means what? Framework is, what is framework actually? Framework is nothing but it is one new layer developed on top of the existing technologies. A new layer developed on top of the existing technologies. Working with this new layer, the framework, is easy for the developers because this new layer will provide me common functionalities automatically. Yesterday I told you that. So that I can able to develop my applications easy and faster. Right? So simply, if I want to just explain in the form of a diagram, I mean diagram in the sense just like normally, see, I will try to explain this, guys. See, previously I'm a developer. I'm a developer. Okay, I'm a developer. Tell me, as a developer, I'm going to develop applications by using what? I use technologies. Developer used technologies. Developer used what? Technologies. Developer used what? Technologies previously. Today, same developer using to develop applications. What is using? Frameworks. Okay, right? So previously, by using technologies, when I'm started developing a real-time application, a project, for example, 100% of code I need to develop for the project. Using these technologies, I can develop the software application, but entire code I need to develop. But now using frameworks, when I'm developing application, 50% of code is enough to write by me. Best example, as I said even yesterday, suppose if you want to perform a database insert operation, first you need to load the driver. After loading the driver, JDBC driver, then you need to open a connection. You need to open a connection to the database. Once after opening a connection, you should create a statement object for performing the operations. After that, you have to execute your SQL query. Execute what query? Your SQL query. And once after that, you have to close the, okay, simply close the connection. Am I right or not? Now today, if I'm working with the framework, this is what you are working with JDBC technology. Am I right or not? This is what you're doing with JDBC technology. But today I'm going to work with what? Framework, not the technology. So I'll strike off. I no need to do this. 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 Then what to do? Means previously, as a developer, I have written 15 lines code. Today, with the framework, I will write this 15 lines code into 2 lines. Right? You guys are also having some JDBC knowledge. 15 lines JDBC code is going to become 2 lines in Spring. 2 lines only, not more than 2 lines. Are you able to follow me? Because today we are working with what? Frameworks. Actually, I written 50%. It is 25% only actually. For example, I'm writing average case. Are you getting my point? What I'm saying now? Good. So tell me, as a developer today, I'm going to use what to develop my applications? Frameworks. To develop applications using frameworks, then application development becomes easy and faster for me. I can able to deliver my code faster to the client because I'm not writing 100% code. I'm writing only 50% of the code. What about the remaining 50% of the code? This is common code, na? Just you observe this is common code or not. You for example, keep two JDBC programs side by side. First program is insert record. Second program is delete record. Keep side by side. Right? Only query will change. Here it is insert query. In the second program, it is delete query. But what about above statements and below statements? Same. This is called common code. Who will provide that common functionality? Framework. Sorry, getting the point now? Tell me what this framework will do internally. It will also use technology only. This framework internally uses what? Technologies. Now tell me, are you directly working with the technologies nowadays? No. You are going to develop applications using frameworks, and frameworks will internally use again what? Technologies. Did you guys understood now? So what is a framework now? A framework is nothing but an abstraction layer on top of the existing technologies. What is the framework definition? A framework. I think yesterday somebody asked a framework. What is framework? Yeah. What is framework now? A framework is nothing but it is an abstraction layer on top of the existing technologies. Existing technologies. Am I clear with you, online people? Okay, did you guys understood what is what? Did you guys understood about what is what? This is what I am trying to tell you. Okay, let's go ahead, guys. Let's go ahead. Okay, I'm just going to delete these drawings. Now tell me today as a developer, we are going to develop applications directly by using technologies or by using frameworks? By using frameworks. But if you want to clearly understand framework, knowledge on technology is also required. That's why previously we used to teach only advanced Java classes for 4 to 5 months. But now we are going to complete within 40 to 45 days only, or 1 month only. Why? Because nowadays you are not developing the applications by using technologies. You have to learn more on frameworks. But to understand the frameworks properly, you should have the knowledge on technology. That's why in advanced Java, we are completing these technologies in a 1 month or 40 days, but we are focusing more on frameworks. Did you understand now? Everybody is doing that. Am I clear with you now? Right, good. Coming to the point here. Coming to the point here. Look at the point here, everybody. So now coming to the point here. Actually, what I am trying to tell you all, guys, what I'm trying to tell you all, I just want to talk about today some in detail discussion on these things. I'll tell you, don't worry. So tell me, there is a technology called Servlet and JSP, but now on top of these technologies, one framework was introduced. That framework name was Struts. What is it? Struts. So now the same diagram, guys, same diagram. Everybody try to understand. The same diagram, I'm going to keep one more time here. The same diagram I'm going to keep one more time here. Everybody is getting this point? Okay. Now here, tell me in place of Servlet JSP, which technology was, which framework was introduced? Struts. STRUTS. Some people write STRUCTS, but it is wrong. STRUTS. Struts framework. Struts framework. Tell me, Struts framework was created on top of which technologies? Servlet and JSP technologies. Which framework was introduced? First framework in Java. Struts framework, only the first framework in Java. Struts framework was introduced. Okay, Struts framework is integrating with EJB and Java Bean and EJB. Next, it is going to connect with the JDBC, then it's going to connect with the database. Initially, applications are done like this. Initially, applications developed like this in Java, web application development in Java. Next, which framework was introduced? Struts framework was introduced. I'll tell you. Next, what happened? Not Spring. Next, what happened? Hibernate framework was introduced. Which framework? Hibernate framework. So, guys, understand this. Next, what happened is Hibernate framework was introduced. Here, already Struts framework was introduced. Here, what? Struts framework was introduced. next what happened? Next what happened? In place of the JDBC, which framework was introduced? Hibernate framework. Which framework was introduced? Hibernate framework was introduced. Hibernate framework is a layer on top of which technology? JDBC technology. That's why if you want to learn Hibernate framework, you should have some idea about which technology? JDBC. If you want to learn Struts framework, you should have the knowledge on which technologies? Servlet and JSP technologies, like that. So next, application development is done like this. Okay, now only which part is remaining now? Service layer. In service layer, which framework, which technology was used? EJB, Java Bean and EJB. EJB stands for Enterprise Java Bean. As an alternate for EJB technology, I'm telling you now, this framework is not layer on top of EJB. It is not a layer on top of EJB technology. Generally, a framework is a layer on top of existing technology. Such a framework is a layer on top of which technologies? Servlet and JSP. Hibernate is a framework developed on top of, but Spring is not a framework developed on top of EJB. It is developed as alternate for EJB. Developed as what? Alternate for EJB. Everybody remember this point. Spring framework was actually introduced only for developing the service layer of the project. Service layer means business layer. As an alternate for which technology? EJB technology. Did you guys got my point? Very good. So tell me, what is my next diagram then? In my next diagram, let us have all the frameworks. Okay. In the year like 2009, 10, 11, 2011 even, 2011, 12, at that time, a student has to learn 3 frameworks. Actually, you are lucky people. Because at that time, a student has to learn how many frameworks? 3 frameworks they have to learn to get the job. In the resume, all the 3 required. What are the 3? Struts framework, Hibernate framework, and Spring framework. But of course, at that time, Spring is not this much big. And we don't have any Spring Boot, all these things, microservices. Spring framework. Now, did you guys understand now? Now, which framework is introduced in the service layer? Spring. So initially, Spring framework was introduced only for developing which layer of a real-time project? Service layer, which is also called a business logic layer. Business layer or business logic layer. Are you able to get the clarity on this now? Very good. Spring framework was introduced. Actually, Spring framework is a layer on EJB technology or alternate of EJB technology. It is not a layer, it is alternate, completely different. Okay, it is a lightweight. I'll tell you later what is lightweight meaning. So it is an alternate. Spring framework introduced. Okay, good. Now let us come to the point. Everybody try to understand the concept here. Initially, what happened? Spring framework, because it is given as an alternate for EJB, actually EJB is a complicated technology. I agree. EJB is a very complicated, many XML files you need to write. Okay, each component is having 7, 8 life cycle methods. It has to implement at least 2 or 3 interfaces. So developing business logic layer with EJB technology was very complicated. That is a very heavyweight technology. Complicated technology is another name, heavyweight technologies. Are you able to get my point now? So EJB technology is actually a very heavyweight technology. Complicated technology, I agree with that. Lot of complications are there in the technology. Not so easy. As an alternate, which framework was introduced? Spring Framework. Are you able to follow me? Spring Framework was introduced. Okay, right. Just to know, you know, this Struts framework was introduced by a person called Clanahan. Okay, the scientist names are not important, but just at least to know, you can keep in mind. What's the person name? Clanahan. Clanahan is a person who developed the Struts framework, who introduced Struts framework. Spring framework was introduced by Rod Johnson. What's the name? Rod Johnson. Are able to get my point, right? Okay. Next, Hibernate framework was introduced by that guy named, just now I recollected, but still again. Yes, Gavin King. Okay, right? Are you getting my point? Very good. So Gavin King is a person who developed the Hibernate framework. The pretty important thing is Gavin King developed this Hibernate framework when he was at age 14. At that time, his age 14 years. Okay. Now he is, I think, in the middle of 30s. Okay. These all three persons are alive. Okay, right? They are not dead people, they are alive. Okay. Right. You can search in Google. You can see the Rod Johnson photo, Gavin King photo, Clanahan photo, Craig McClanahan, his complete name. Craig. MC means Mc. Craig McClanahan. Okay, right. Okay, leave it that. So just to know, I'm not telling that you must remember these names. Okay, right? Good. No need to remember scientist names. Nobody will ask you also who is a scientist developed or something like that. Okay. Tell me, Spring Framework is given as an alternate for which technology? EJB technology. As an alternate for EJB technology, which framework was introduced? Spring Framework was introduced. Am I clear so far with the diagrams? No? Not coming. Because Spring Framework got popularity. Because the developers liked the Spring Framework. Because of Spring Framework easy. Spring Framework is very easy. Okay. I will disable this option. Now you can't draw. Okay. Right. Okay. Coming to the point, guys. So what happens? Spring Framework is very lightweight framework. Complicated applications also. How much complicated application you want to develop? Business logic for a complicated banking systems, telecom systems, but you can develop in a easy way. Because framework is designed like that. Are you getting my point? Spring Framework was introduced by Rod Johnson. Actually, Rod Johnson is an ex-employee of Oracle. Okay. And he came out of that company. He created own company called Interface 21. Company name Interface. This is additional knowledge I'm giving. Don't keep for a long time in the mind. Today only you just listen and leave it. Company name is Interface 21. Why he kept the name as Interface 21? Because his company is having 21 employees only. His company is having 21 employees only. He kept 21 employees only in the company. Interface 21. And with that name Interface 21 only, in that company only Spring Framework he developed. He is the lead of that company, simply. Means with the 21 members team, he created what framework? Spring Framework. Later on, he changed the name of the Interface 21 to Spring Source. Spring Source. Okay, right? That's okay. Leave it. Come to the point. Okay. Made as open source, Spring Source is the name given. Okay, leave it. So Spring Framework, as an alternate for EJB technology, what happened? It got more popularity. I mean, people, developers in the industry liked the framework. Because so far they worked with EJB technology. That's very complicated technology, really. Right. But a large application, any complicated critical application also can be implemented in Spring easily. No need to fill or no need to write complicated logic like EJB. So people started liking Spring framework. Then what happened? This is Spring framework team. Now they focused on spreading the Spring framework into the remaining two layers also. What are the remaining two layers? Even the presentation layer and also to the data access layer. They spreaded this framework to develop presentation layer and also to the data access layer. Instead of using multiple frameworks for developing the application, then the Spring team wants that what? Use a single framework only for developing the entire application. As you know, previously, if you go down like a 10 years back or so, 10 years, 12 years back, we don't have any something called supermarkets, hypermarkets, more DMart, ఇలాంటి లేవు కదా అప్పుడు. We don't have. ఒక 15 years back, 12 years back వెళ్తే ఇట్లాంటి లేవు. We don't have this type of hypermarkets or supermarkets. Individual shops are there. Suppose you want to purchase steel items, steel shop. Grocery items, grocery shop. Right? For example, any home decoration items, pillows, covers, whatever it is, windows, curtains, something like that. Separate shop, home decoration shop, furniture shop. Right? If you want to purchase meat, non-veg or whatever, go to non-veg shop. Multiple shops you have to visit. Right? But nowadays what happened? If once you enter into metro market, once you enter into metro, you can purchase electronics, everything, home furniture, steel items, groceries, meat, everything you can purchase from one shopping mall only. Am I right or not? Same thing happened here also. Instead of developing application by using multiple frameworks like Struts, Hibernate, Spring, the problem is what? Integrations are getting problem. See, Struts one version, separate framework, na? Spring another version, Hibernate another version. Every framework have their own versions. So what is happening now when versions are mismatching? Integration problems are coming. What problems are coming? Integration. They are not properly integrating. Maybe Struts is not supporting this Spring version. Maybe Spring is not supporting this Hibernate version. Version mismatching is coming. That's why what Spring framework team thought, instead of using different multiple frameworks, why can't people use a single framework for developing entire application? Slowly, what they did now, they have expanded the Spring framework to presentation layer and also to the data access layer, and for that they have divided the Spring framework into modules. Suppose one team is working on presentation layer of the application, then they no need to learn all the modules of the Spring framework because their intention is only what to develop the presentation layer. So then for them, Spring framework has given one module called Spring MVC. What module? Spring MVC, Model View Controller. Spring MVC module given. The people who are developing service layer, they have to use a Spring Core and Spring AOP and Spring Transactions. The people who are working with the data access layer, they have to learn a module called Spring ORM. What is that? Spring ORM. ORM stands for Object Relational Mapping. ORM stands for Object Relational Mapping. Now you tell me, Spring framework actually introduced into which layer? Service layer. Later expanded to which layers? Presentation layer and also to the data access layer. Are you able to get my point what I'm saying now, right? So for that, what Spring framework team did now, they have divided the framework into different modules, independent modules. Modules for presentation layer, modules for service layer, modules for data access layer. Are you able to follow me now? Very good. Next, I want to change my diagram. Am I clear with you guys, online people? If you have any query, please let me know. If you understood, please type yes in the chat box. So
Sir?
that,
Sir,
yes.
sir, presentation layer Spring Framework, what did they bring?
I'm writing here.
Okay.
I'm giving the diagram. Okay. See here.
Okay.
See, Spring Framework has now divided into modules. There is a module given called as Spring MVC. What's the module name? Spring MVC. Spring MVC, one module is given. It is one of the module in Spring Framework. Spring MVC, we are also going to learn Spring Boot. Spring MVC. And here, the modules of the Spring used are, one is Spring Core, Spring AOP, and Spring Transactions. Spring Core, Spring AOP. AOP stands for Aspect Oriented Programming. And Spring Transactions. I'm writing simply TXS because I don't have space. Because of space complexity, I'm writing like this. Okay, right. So tell me, these are the modules are used for developing which layer? Service layer. And for data access layer, Spring ORM. Spring ORM. Spring ORM is one of the module which is given. Along with the Spring ORM, again here also transactions module also, because database transactions are also required. Spring Transactions. These are the important modules. Are you able to get my point, everybody? Right? So tell me what happened now. Spring Framework divided into modules. Suppose I am a developer where I want to develop only the present. I am only a person in the team where my team is only responsible for developing which layer? Presentation layer. Then tell me, do I need to learn entire Spring AOP, Spring Transactions, ORM, all these things? No, it's not required for me. My requirement is what? I am a member of which team? Presentation layer team. So which means which module of the Spring Framework is enough for me? I can use Spring MVC. I can only go through Spring MVC. I can learn it and I can able to implement which layer? Presentation layer. Are you able to get my point? I am only service layer development team. I am a business logic development team. I am a member of the business logic development team. Then tell me, in that case, which modules I need to know? Spring Core. Spring Core is generally a common module. Next, Spring AOP. AOP stands for Aspect Oriented Programming. AOP stands for Aspect Oriented Programming. You can easily remember because it is looking like OOP. OOP stands for Object Oriented Programming. AOP stands for Aspect Oriented Programming. Okay, right. At that later on, I'll explain what's the difference between OOP and AOP. It's one of the questions you'll get in interview. What's the difference between Object Oriented Programming and Aspect Oriented Programming? OOP and AOP. You'll understand. Next, Spring Transactions. Okay, na? Spring ORM module is given. Spring ORM module is a layer on top of Hibernate framework. Means internally Spring ORM use which framework only? Hibernate framework only. That's why still some knowledge of Hibernate is good to understand the Spring ORM. Of course, that I'm going to teach you when we are discussing about Spring Data JPA. Don't worry about that. Are you able to follow me now, right? Spring ORM, Spring JDBC. These are the modules given. Spring JDBC module. Did you guys understood now? Spring JDBC, Spring ORM, Spring Transactions. These modules of the Spring are used for developing which layer of the application? Data access layer of the application. Okay, right. So far you are good with all the things now. Let us back from my diagrams. Initially, application development in Java, real-time project development in Java for web applications developed with the help of these technologies. Later on, which framework was first introduced? SURS framework was introduced. This framework is a layer on top of which technologies? Servlet and JSP. Later on, after SURS framework, next which framework was introduced? Hibernate framework was introduced, which is a layer on top of which technology? JDBC technology. Later on, which framework introduced? Spring. Spring framework is a layer on top of which technology? I told already, Spring framework is not a layer on top of EJB. It is a alternate. It is an alternate framework for EJB. It's not layer. It is alternate for EJB. Initially, Spring framework was introduced as an alternate for which technology? EJB, to develop which layer of the application? Later, Spring framework is expanded to which layers also? Presentation layer, service layer, and also the data access layer. Are you able to follow me, right? Is everybody is getting this point? Right. Tell me, Spring MVC framework will internally use which technologies? No, not STUTS. STUTS separate framework. Technologies I'm talking. STUTS is a framework, no? Which technology do you use internally? HTML, CSS, JavaScript, common technologies plus a servlet plus what? JSP. Later on, some new scripting given called Thymeleaf. Okay, you'll understand that later. Thymeleaf is also one technology. Okay, these technologies are used. Spring MVC internally these technologies. Are you able to follow me now? Presentation layer. Is it clear for all of you now? Right? Good. So far, any doubts for online people? So far, do you have any doubts so far in these diagrams? In these diagrams and in this explanation, I'm going to copy all these diagrams into our document. Into our document, I'm going to keep. Okay. I just want to say.
Okay, is okay, sir. Thank you.
Yeah. Software application architecture. So I want to keep the name like this. Okay, I'll keep this name also in the next page. Then I want to draw diagrams one by one. Means I want to copy these diagrams into the document. Now I will tell you. Still my explanation is not completed. Still there is one more thing, because in this entire diagram, so far I have not introduced about anything called as Angular or React. Right? Next I'm going to introduce that. Okay, first I want to copy all these diagrams into one page. IMG1. Okay, na? So now I want to keep this into the document. I want to insert this picture into the document. Everybody, so far our discussion is incomplete. Then I want to make it complete by drawing one more diagram. Okay, na? Are you getting my point now? So far, this is what I have explained to you, right? Now let us move on. Now let us move on, guys. Everybody try to understand me. Okay? Yeah. Yes. That's why, how many frameworks you are going to learn nowadays in Java? Only one framework, right? For the only one framework you are learning, Spring framework. Because all the layers of the application are going to develop by using which framework only? Spring framework only. So Spring is like a supermarket. Everything you can, it will accommodate for everything. Okay, na? Right. Now coming to the point, sir, it is all okay, clear, but where is my, okay, so I'm somewhat disturbed here. Where is my Angular? I already learned Angular Where is my React? I already learned React. Now I want to talk about what happened from last, maybe just before Corona or even from Corona onwards. What happened? Full stack development. This type of new application development architecture came. Means what is happening there? I'll tell you. Front-end system, front-end application, back-end application, divided like that. Previously, what? Front-end, back-end, everything developed in Java only. Spring MVC, front-end. Presentation is a front-end. Huh? So Spring MVC for front-end, remaining all for back-end. Completely front-end, back-end, both are in Java frameworks only. Are you able to follow me now? Right. But now, from full stack development, when the people started working with the full stack development, front end, back end separated. Okay. In the middle of the front end and back end, to provide communication between the front end and back end, in the middle, one more layer introduced called API layer. What layer? API layer. Okay. Let me talk about that. I will explain. Don't worry. Now, if you take today's application development, we have the presentation layer, we have the service layer, data access layer. In between the presentation layer and the service layer, there is new layer, which is called what layer? API layer. Now, this presentation layer development is not done with the Spring MVC. Okay, right? For the presentation layer development, nowadays we are not using Spring. To develop this presentation layer, nowadays what we are using? We are using common technologies are what? HTML, CSS, JavaScript, along with what? Angular or React. These are all used for which layer development? Presentation layer development. Now you tell me, that's why nowadays Spring MVC doesn't have that much importance. Technologies will change. Am I right or not? See, there is no such constant technology. Am I right or not? Will change, right? Languages will change, technologies will change. There is no constant thing in the world, right? Everything is moving. There is no constant. Let me take, for example, 20 years back, does anybody know about an English word called mobile? Even Oxford English Dictionary also does not contain a word called mobile. Am I right or not? 20 years back, nobody knows about what? There is a word in English called mobile. But today, without that, we are not living. Am I right or not? Mobile, right? It reached to each and every nook and corner places. Right? Okay. Include the deep forest also. Everywhere mobile is there. So what I'm trying to say, there is nothing constant. So we also need to change according to that. Right. Now also, sir, no, I don't want to learn Spring framework. I want to learn the Struts framework and I want to get the job. Is it possible easily? No. Because if there are 90 Spring framework jobs are there, 1 or 2 Struts framework jobs are there. So job market is more for Spring with Boot microservices. If you learn Struts framework, no, sir, I want to learn very old technology called Pascal language, a COBOL language. Okay. I know very well COBOL and Pascal. I want to get a software job. Is it possible? No, nobody will give you a job with the knowledge of Pascal and COBOL nowadays. So we also need to change. Am I right or not? Coming to the point. I want to talk about this now. Guys, in the middle of these two layers, which layer got introduced now? API layer. Now presentation layer development is now made with what? Presentation layer development is made with what? HTML, CSS, JavaScript, Bootstrap, Angular, and React or React. These are all for developing which layer? Presentation layer. In between the presentation layer and service layer, one more layer is introduced. So that is called which layer? API layer. That API layer is developed by using RESTful web services. What is that? To develop that API layer, Spring Framework has given one module. It's not a module, but okay, we can call like module. One API called Spring REST API. What API? Spring REST API. That's why nowadays Spring MVC is important or Spring REST is important. Spring REST is important, not Spring MVC. But Spring REST also follows MVC architecture. You should know MVC first. But module wise, which module is important? Spring REST. Backend is REST API. People are calling like that only, na? Front end is calling the backend REST API. When you're learning Angular or React, people call like that, okay? Our front end application calls the backend API. Using the word called backend API. What API? REST API. What API? REST API. So tell me, nowadays application development. Now the final diagram. Now the final diagram. Everyone try to focus on this. The final diagram. The final diagram is which module is almost not required. Not required, I mean you should have the knowledge. Because to learn Spring REST, Spring MVC is the basics. But which module you need to learn completely nowadays? Spring. You have knowledge on MVC, that is good. But no need to very deep learning of Spring MVC is not required. Because you are not developing the presentation layer by using Spring MVC. You are going to use Angular or React frameworks. So our diagram is going to be changed. Let me copy this diagram once. I want to paste it here. And I want to make some changes to the diagram. Guys, tell me what is coming in place of the present. So presentation layer is not copied. Just a minute. Sorry. Now, everyone, the final diagram we are going to get. The final diagram we are going to get. Front end, back end you are going to get now. Am I clear with the front and back end here? Now you tell me, in place of Spring MVC, what is going to be used nowadays? Angular or React. If I'm talking about Angular or React, internally it uses HTML, CSS, JavaScript, Bootstrap, all these things. Na? So simply the name I am writing. What's the name I'm writing? Angular or React. Angular or React.js. For developing which layer? Presentation layer. But between the presentation layer and the service layer means business logic. Na? This is called backend systems, right? In between these two, one more layer introduced. First of all, let me delete these arrows. Sorry. Let me delete these arrows. And also let us keep them right side. Now you guys tell me, in between these two, one more layer introduced. One more layer introduced. Then you tell me that layer is called which layer? API layer. Guys, tell me this is called which layer? API layer. Everyone, try to focus on this. There is a new layer introduced here. That new layer is called as API layer. API stands for Application Programming Interface. Which layer it is called? API layer. Sorry, API layer. And this API layer is going to act like a bridge between front end and back end. This presentation layer is called front end. This is called back end. This is called bridge between what and what? Front end and back end. Back end we are going to develop using Spring. This API layer we are going to use Spring REST API. Tell me, this is very, very important. Nowadays, this is very, very important, which is called Spring REST API. I'm using the word Spring REST API. This is called RESTful web services. REST web services, people are calling the Spring REST API. Are you able to follow me now? Nowadays, how the connectivity will be now? The connectivity will be from this Angular or React application is going to call the API. Are you able to follow me? Now this API is going to call the service layer. Remaining is common. So did everyone understood about how it is working? Okay, tell me. Now you tell me, front end means what? Presentation layer. Using which technologies and frameworks nowadays you are developing the front end? Angular or React. To learn Angular or React, first you are completing your course called HTML, CSS, JavaScript, Bootstrap. Then you are going to enter into Angular or React. Correct? This is for developing which layer? Front end. Back end means API layer. API layer is a bridge between front end systems and back end logics. But API layer also comes under back end part only. So back end means what? API layer, service layer, data access layer. This is called back end, database. Full stack means what? Front end plus back end plus database. Front end is Angular or React. Back end is Spring, API layer, service, data access layer, Spring, boot, microservices, everything. Next, database. Did you guys understood now? This is completely called what? Full stack. Full stack. Okay. I want to give something like this. I want to give something like this. Tell me, this is called what end? This is called what end? Front end. Guys, this is called front end. Am I clear? Front end. Now, guys, tell me, this is called what end? Back end. This is called back end. This is called back end. Are you able to follow me now? Right. Back end. So, tell me, to develop the back end in Java, you have to learn what and what? Spring REST API, Spring Core, Spring AOP, Spring Transactions, Spring JDBC, Spring ORM, Spring Transactions. These are all you are going to learn. Sir, our course is Spring Boot and microservices. Where is our course in this diagram? Which means we don't need to learn Spring Boot and microservices. Huh? No. Previously, we developed applications with the Spring. Spring Boot is not a new framework. Like Struts framework, Hibernate framework. Spring Boot is not a new framework. Who is a Spring Boot? Extension of the Spring framework only. A new model, a new approach. It's not a new framework. It is new approach. Spring Boot also Spring only. But Spring Boot is a new model name, new approach to develop the applications. I'll talk about that at the time of Spring Boot introduction. Are you able to get my point now? Right. So currently remember, what is Spring Boot? It is an extension of the Spring framework, which is a new approach or a model for developing the backend applications. For developing the backend applications using which framework? Spring framework. Framework is which framework only? Spring framework only. Model name is which model? Spring Boot. Spring Boot is a model, a new approach. Are you able to follow me? Try to understand now. Then what are microservices? Large applications. Let's take Uber, Facebook. They are very big applications, right? So they are divided into small applications. One large application which is divided into small applications. That small applications are called services. Each service we call as one microservice. Each service we call as what? One microservice. One microservice. You take Amazon, you take Uber, you take Facebook. There are a lot of microservices are available in that. If you take only Uber application, one Uber application looks like one application for us. But in the back end, it is approximately 2,500 services. Means internally it is how many applications? 2,500 small applications. Is one Uber system. Facebook also like that only. right? Your friend's request is one service. Your notifications, your friends have birthdays or something, notifications service, news feed service, like that. So Facebook again internally 1,500 services, like that. That's called microservices. Application, one application only, but it is divided into small pieces. They are called as services. They are also called as micro services. Small services are called micro, no? Micros. That's why name given as microservices. Okay, anyhow, I don't have much time to explain today, but I think whatever I've given today diagrams may give some clarity on application development. And tomorrow I will give more in detail. I need to cover all. Okay, just a minute. I want to copy this diagram also into our document, guys. And I want to conclude the class for today. So online people, did you guys understood about so far what we have discussed in the session? Could you guys give me a reply in the chat box? I want to keep this diagram into the document. I would like to know whether you guys received all these points or not.
Yes, sir. For me. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay, all right. Good. Guys, thanks. Yeah. Good, nice. Thank you. So now, okay, so now in the next session, I will continue further to explain some more in deeper of this. Okay, in deeper of this. Next time I'm going to talk about all these things. Actually, first we are going to start tomorrow. I'll give just introduction. I will talk about Spring is called modular framework. Modules are there now. So just I will write which module is for which purpose, like that. Then first our intention is what we want to start our discussion with the Spring core module, which is the base module for, or the basic module for learning the Spring with the Spring Boot microservices, everything. So tomorrow we are going to start with the Spring core module. That's where we are going to start. After discussion of Spring core module, before developing the first Spring application, initially for the first one, another approximately for the next 10 days or more, we are not going to do Spring Boot. Okay, we are not going to enter into Spring Boot. We are going to discuss only Spring framework only. Okay, approximately for the next 2 weeks, we will focus on only Spring framework, and we are going to know about annotations and everything. Spring containers, annotations, coding, everything. But to develop the applications, we are going to use one build tool called what? Maven. What's the tool name? Maven. I'll tell you what is the meaning of build tool, what build tool does, all these kind of things I'll explain. Then I'll give you some good knowledge on Maven build tool. Because Maven is mandatory to develop our Spring applications, Spring Boot applications, and microservices applications. What is mandatory? Maven. So if you have already knowledge on Maven, that is well and good. If you don't know, you are going to learn definitely. Because first I'm going to talk about Maven. I'll take 2 to 3 sessions on Maven, completely to explain about what is Maven. After that, then we are going to start working with the applications. Then we are going to develop applications using Maven. Spring applications, Spring Boot, microservices, everything with the Maven. They are called build tools. We are going to see that next. Okay, right. So that's the session for today, guys. And we will continue on tomorrow. Okay. So far, I have not shared the document. Today, I'll share the document. At least you can go through it. Huh? Today, I'll share the document. I'll go through it. You people can go through it in Ashok IT portal. I'll share the document. Please go through it. And in the tomorrow's session, we are going to just get introduction to the Spring core module. Means I'm not directly talking about Spring core module. First, today I told about is a relationship and has a relationship. Okay, that I'm going to talk. What is dependency? Who is called a dependent class? Who is called a dependency class? Okay, right? What is called a tight coupling between objects,
Hello, good
what
morning,
is called loose coupling between objects. These things I'm going to talk. Okay, na? Right. Thank you. Yeah, somebody is trying to talk to me.
కంప్లీట్ అయిపోయింది సార్.
Hello.
హలో సార్,
Yes,
డెమో
yes.
సెక్షన్ డెమోస్ అని కంప్లీట్ అయిపోయినాయి సార్, లేకపోతే ఇప్పుడు దాకా సార్
Tomorrow.
డేట్?
We'll complete by tomorrow.
ఓకే సార్, ఓకే సార్.
Yeah.
ఓకే సార్, థ్యాంక్ యూ సార్.
Sir, one take
Saturday
one.
we will have